Nice. Okay, welcome back, everybody. You guys are so punctual. I feel like it's just back in time. Everybody's ready. So good. We'll see if you can hold that for tomorrow, too. Okay, so quick reminder tonight, the Monday Mixer is going to be downstairs in the Longboat Hall starting around 6. So basically after Brendan's talk here, which will be the last talk today, just head downstairs. Drink tickets will be given to you at the door, but if you want extra drink tickets, go over to the conversation room, talk to the exhibitors, ask them if they have tickets. They might. Okay, our next presenter, Barney Steel, is an artist and director of the London-based experiential studio Marshmallow Laser Feast, who are just awesome. Barney's art practice centers on the senses. It's all about enticing audiences into states of expanded perception, a space where the boundaries between bodies blur. Please welcome Barney Steel.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Ahoy, ahoy. So let me just do the sound check here. Got sound, get my volume up. Can you hear it? Okay, good. Robin hates me showing this. My business partner, Robin. I slip it into his decks when he's doing presentations. So here's Robin for a few minutes. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm super chuffed to be sharing the stage with all these legends, and God, it got me nervous. I'm feeling all like I've got tingles. I've got a bit of a butt twitch going on, and why does that happen? But anyway, I'm just gonna. Actually, I might just breathe. Let me just. Okay. Right. So this narrative here is kind of like my tale through the Marshmallow Laser Feast river estuary. There's 3 creative directors, and we all cross-pollinate. It's all about collaboration, and this is my kind of meandering journey as the studio's evolved. Last night, we were talking about peacocks, and I saw a peacock recently, and I was just like, how is it possible that a peacock exists? Like, look at that, a peacock. And then I thought, I'm doing a project about deep time, and I thought, oh my God, the female peacock is a deep time tuning fork for beauty. She's like, maybe a million years ago, she was like, nah. Ooh, I like that little eyeball, like that. And then she's just like picky, and deep time tuning fork. You end up with that. And it's got this relationship with the eyeball of the female. So I just thought I'd touch on that. And then I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, deep time. Stars have got the potential for peacocks and people in them, like the molten hearts of stars. Okay, that was a little random nugget from last night. So, Marshmallow Laser Feast, yeah, we started the company. In fact, we had our own companies. There was me, Robin McNicholas, and Memo Acton, and we'd done this collaborative project together, and in fact, I'll show you it now. Let's do that, and then I can talk about the name.
Okay, ready?
So just to save at the top, this was our sound brief to the sound designer, so we all sort of freestyled it on our iPhones. Knackered. We've been up late on that one. So we, thank you. So we started, we all had our own companies, and we started working together, and we produced this juicy little number, and that kind of unraveled into being super excited about the creative potential of new technology. And so this is a show reel that we put together. This is like 10 years old now. And, we got so excited. photogrammetry, photoreal eyeballs, reflections, lasers, musical lasers, moving musical lasers with cars and will.i.am and reflective cars, moving more lasers, moving laser, light sculptures, robot arm light sculptures, tracking systems, drones with LED lights and mirrors, breaking the boundary with the audio, moving TVs, light painting TVs with motion capture, guys with torches, wafting particles, interactive robot arms looking at reverse engineered caustics in crystals, projection mapping reels, cardboard with LEDs inside. Started to feel a bit like this guy. We were kind of deep in the glittery anus of technology. Oh, the potential. And this was leading to a kind of a big change in direction. So me and Robin were doing some commercial work. I was on this runway in Germany with will.i.am.
It activates the lighting system.
Whilst Memo was doing a talk in Tokyo. I only found this out recently. I don't know if you can see here, but the title, I zoomed in. Fuck clients. So Memo was in Tokyo doing a talk entitled Fuck Clients, and me and Robin were working on a car commercial on a cold runway in Germany. And so, we saw it coming. Memo left, which was a beautiful moment. It's a transition moment, and big love to him. We're good friends, and there was no hard feelings. But Memo left, and then there was a kind of moment of like, oh, shit, what are we going to do? And we had a kind of stepping back and seeing the bigger picture. And so this kind of perspective shift, suddenly it's like, oh, wait a second. While we've been lost in our little techno bubble, this is happening in Japan. This is happening in the Amazon. And then I had a few sort of really kind of strange moments, almost like meeting a guardian angel. And there was I was on a flight to Lima, and this guy was sitting next to me, really old guy, and his elbows stuck right out, so he was kind of in my space a little bit. And I had this tree up on my laptop. We've been pushing the limits of photogrammetry and exploring some nature-based artworks. It was sort of the early days of that. And this guy leaned over my laptop screen. He said, oh, the reason the trees are so old is because they breathe so slowly. And then he went, and I did this really, and I was like, whoa. It was intense. It turned out he was a Tai Chi master, and he was going to see his dad, who was like 70. And we stayed friends, but on that flight, he was talking to me about sort of dharma and sort of destiny. And he asked me this question: how does your work affect people and the planet? And that question really stuck with me, and it was part of a journey that I went on personally, where I started to ask these bigger questions about why I get out of bed in the morning. My mum got me this book. I was sort of interested in Buddhism, and Satis Kumar's got some peaches in here. He sort of talks about how to transition from a sort of consumerist mindset to a conservation mindset. It requires falling in love. You can't make that deep change without there being love in there. And so part of his sort of spiritual practice is going to sit in a forest for a week and connect and fall in love with nature. And I started to think about, is there a way of translating those? Not everyone's going to go and sit in a forest. Is there a way of translating the essence of what he's talking about into immersive experiences, sort of bringing those insights into the city? One of the golden nuggets that Memo left us with was an absolute man crush on Richard Feynman. And so I've muted him here because I think it would take too long, but he's talking about this relationship he's got with his artist friend. And so he says, oh, when my artist friend is drawing a flower, then he might have a more advanced sensibility to me. He's sort of got an eye for the details and the subtlety of color that maybe I don't have. But me as a scientist, I can see dimensions of beauty that he can't see. So it's the reason that the flower is red is because it coexists in relationship to the eyeball of a pollinator. It asks the question, does the pollinator have an aesthetic sense like we do? And not only that, there's like the little inner workings of it, the fact that it's drawing the energy of the sun and weaving it into sugar, which is like at the foundation of the food chain. So at essence here, I sort of really fell for this idea that a scientific understanding only ever adds to a sense of awe and wonder. It never subtracts. And so while diving into these scientific narratives, getting really excited, interviewing scientists, collaborating and planning projects, I started to understand a bit more about the reductionist mindset, which is sort of at the essence a lot of science. So you break the world up into parts, you label all those parts, and that's how you understand how something works. And it struck me that the naming of things obscures the things themselves. So when you talk about a tree, you separate it from the pollinator, but the pollinator is an essential part of the tree. It can't reproduce without the pollinator. And so this idea of how language creates objects, but what really exists is a relationship between objects. The objects themselves are just a convenient way of us being able to point at something and label it. I was in a desert, and I had this virtual reality experience with me, and there was a Bedouin band there, and they had a generator, and I wanted to borrow the power because I was going to show some friends. And so I plugged all my stuff in, and then the musician came over to me, and he said, oh, tell me, what are you doing? What's all this virtual reality stuff? And I started to explain, I was exploring perception and looking at the world through the eyes of another animal. I was waffling on, and he went to me like this, he went, shh, and he put his finger on my lips, which is, it's an amazing way to shut someone up. And he said, tell me, what does an apple taste like? And yeah, try and explain what an apple tastes like. You can't, like, the sensation of eating an apple is so beyond any words. What are we going to say? It's sweet and crunchy or crisp? So it's and then he said, so shut up and let me have a go. So I let him try the experience. But that really stayed with me, because I was thinking about how stories are so often communicated through words and language, but the sensation of an experience engages all of the senses. And those experiences, those multisensory experiences, go way beyond the limits of language. So another part of my meandering, I was just thinking about the relationship of technology and storytelling to our senses. And so for years, this is how people painted horses. And then the advent of photography, the frozen image, the image sequence, suddenly you're able to see that this is how horses really run. And so it raises this question: if you were to draw a horse now, you'd probably be more likely to draw this, even though your eyeball has never seen that except through a screen or through a camera. So it's via the technology that it shapes your relationship to what a horse is. And so it's interesting to think how technology shapes our perception, and how these stories that we receive through the lens of Hubble Space Telescope, they transform the emotional connection to when we look up at the stars. So even we can't witness that with our eyeballs, there's this connection, and it flavors our reality. Virtual reality arrived. I thought I'd put it at the start just to get rid of my nerves, to get a bit of a laugh, but then it kills it the second time. Virtual reality arrived, and we got this amazing commission to do site-specific work in Grisdale Forest. And so we'd been playing around with virtual reality, and we were thinking about what's so unique is that you can take somebody out of their body. So what would it be like to see the world through the eyes of a different animal? And Michael Pollan nailed it with this. So to look at the world from another species' point of view is a cure for the disease of human self-importance. I think there's something really true about that, because we're so locked into our bodies, into our human flavor of reality. Even though you can't escape that, you can use virtual reality, immersive experiences to offer a sort of poetic glimpse of other lenses on the world. So this is the piece we made. We LiDAR scanned a section of forest, and we spoke to scientists to understand 4 key species in the ecosystem. So, for example, a dragonfly sees into the ultraviolet spectrum and the infrared, so it's got a much broader color palette that it's sensing. Also, its eyeballs are so big and close to its brain, its perceived reality is at like 300 frames a second. So if it came to see this show, it would see a slideshow of frames with black in between. We're exploring a frog and how it uses echolocation to get feedback through the water to create an image of its environment. And the owl as well was based on the idea that its eyeballs are cemented in its head, so it can't wiggle them around. It has to tilt its head in order to look at different directions. So we kind of brought those ideas together into this journey through the ecosystem. And
Well done,
my dad.
dudes. What a show. What a show. Unbelievable. Very clever. Amazing.
You like that, Dad? We always get them. So whenever my mum and dad come to see a show, I'm like, quick, get the cameras, they're in, and we get it ready to get his reaction when he comes out. So actually that Dad's faceplate, they kept falling off because, I know, the project was low budget and really rushed. But there was a worm climbing out because I've been getting the moss off the floor and sticking them on the faceplate, so you didn't see that. So this project asked this question: what happens when you take the headset off? We noticed that people were spending time in the forest, recognizing the tree. They journeyed up to the canopy. They ended up in this swampy ground. And people hung around a lot and talked about, like, what's it like to be a mosquito? And so it sort of dawned on us that virtual reality, if it's sort of rooted in science, or if it's rooted in dimensions that we can't experience, then when you take the headset off, it can change the way you relate to the world around you. Then we started to think about tree time. What's it like to be a tree? I love this quote. The duration of the beat of a hummingbird's wings is as concealed to our sensory organs as is the drifting of the continents. And so when you think about trees, they feel quite static, almost architectural. The idea of a tree being a living, breathing being is kind of hidden beneath its bark and hidden in a different timescape. So for this piece, we 3D scanned some sakura trees. I spent a lot of time up there. Put the volume down a bit. In this completely mind-blowing, awe-inspiring forest, some of the trees are upwards of 1,500 years. And so just sitting there dreaming, I thought, oh, what if you could accelerate the day-night cycle so it was in sync with the human breath cycle? So it'd be like 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, this movement of the sun through the sky. And then when we started to talk about that with the scientists, they were saying that when the sun passes through the sky, it's like a straw. So it's sucking water through the roots because transpiration occurs in the canopy, and it rests at nighttime. So we took this kind of rhythmical pulse, and in that experience, you follow the journey of water from root to crown. And then we've been coming back to this idea of, when the bark is transparent, a tree shows its true nature. It's more like a river estuary. So on one side, you've got the blue flow of water molecules that are going up to the canopy. Some of that is wound through the process of photosynthesis into sugar, and then a lot of it is also released and generates clouds in the atmosphere. And obviously the oxygen is also released, so there's this constant flow of oxygen up. And then the carbon's being drawn down. And actually, while I was presenting this, that the next stage that we're planning is to really crank up the dial into deep time. And I found this funny little clip. So let me put the volume up a bit. So imagine that's a day-night cycle. Day-night, 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 da-da-da-da-da. You'd end up with this kind of seasonal, like the speed of seasons. What if a year is happening in a human breath cycle? Then a tree would look like, it'd be like a Dyson vacuum just going, pull it, like making clouds. And what if you saw it? And also all the carbon that's going down into the soil, but it's also going like blah, 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 dropping all this fruit. You've got the pollinators. It's like this vibrant process that's actually the source of life. It's eating sunlight and weaving it into sugar. It's drawing that energy into the food that sustains life whilst making the oxygen. So these kind of like the elasticity of time and exploring that, bringing it into the field of view and into the field of human experience is something I'm excited about. Haven't done it yet, though. Oh, the technology evolved. Here's Urson trying out backpack PCs, and this was a kind of game changer in the sector because it meant you didn't need to be cabled. You're in a tracked environment, and you can explore the space cable-free. So that technology was weaving into the new project that we were talking about, which is called We Live in an Ocean of Air. And so this piece, in fact, we could just take a moment to do a bit of breathing before I take you through the project. So we created this animation here. So if everyone just closes their... Oh, no, you can't close your eyes, can you? Keep your eyes open. So breathe out. And breathe in. So if you keep that rhythm going, that slow, deep breathing rhythm, then it will kind of relate to the next slides that I'm going to explore. So within this project, We Live in an Ocean of Air, you had a heart rate monitor on your ear, you had a breath sensor in front of you. At the beginning, we set up this breathing rhythm, so people were breathing with a 5-second in, 5-second out breath. And through your out breath, that flow of carbon dioxide would start to reveal the inner structures of the forest around you. Because breathing is a strange thing. We're in this symbiotic relationship with all the organisms that are doing photosynthesis. So we're just one side of this process. You can think of the atmosphere as the co-creation of all breathing beings, that we're tied in, we're immersed in this ocean of air. And so, yeah, for this piece, multiple people got to go in together. You could see other people breathing. Over time, you rose to the canopy, and the flow of oxygen from the tree would go into your bodies, and you could see your branching lungs and your vascular structure. And it was always designed as this communal experience. So then we got the cameras out for my mum and dad.
It does involve all your senses, and I felt nourished. It's as if you're feeling nourished by the tree, and you see the interaction between yourself and the tree. It's incredibly moving to really understand the sort of the process of collaboration between you and nature.
We are completely at one with it. You are at one with it. You're not the boss. You're part of it. It's just quite wonderful. It's terrific.
They're so supportive. They're always so... it's just the encouragement's off the chart. I'm a lucky fella. But yeah, I always love getting their take on it. And Dad's statement there, he's like, oh yeah, you're one with it. You're not the boss, you're part of it. And that was the perfect response, because at the essence of this thing, I love a bit of Alan Watts. He's been sort of flavoring my jibber-jabber for a long time, but there's this kind of sentiment that what you call the external world is as much your own body, is as much you as your own body, and that your skin doesn't separate you from the world. It's a bridge through which the world flows into you and you flow into the world. So it sort of creates this image that although the skin can give you this sense of separation, that you're like an ecosystem packaged within, but if you make the skin transparent, then you start to reveal what's really going on, which is that you're made of rivers, that you're in constant relationship and exchange through water, nutrients, and breath. So we started to poetically explore this idea. Wonderful animator, Eric Ferguson. We're always collaborating with people, so when a project comes up, I'll often be reaching out to different talented peeps, and we kind of build a team around an idea. So this was, just thinking about that you're more like a flame or a whirlpool than anything static is a perspective shift that forces you to think about your relationship to the things you consume, eat, trees, rivers. Suddenly there's a kind of an idea that your health is tied into the health of the planet, so there's these relationships that start to emerge. This was another animation piece that we were exploring, thinking of how blood diffuses into cells. So there's this, not blood, how oxygen goes on this journey, and eventually it's diffusing into every cell in your body. And so just under the skin, you're in a constant exchange as this flow, almost like fog moving through a landscape. So thinking about the human body and exploring these ideas, we came to this big vision, which is called a vulva. And this is a project that we'll be releasing towards the end of this year. And the essence of it was, what if you could explore the human body at the scale of a forest ecosystem? So be able to walk around, see the lungs the size of trees, and at that kind of scale, maybe one breath would take 20 minutes. And you could just follow that journey of oxygen as it reveals the way that it weaves through the cardiovascular system. So we started to explore this idea. When you take your in-breath, it's almost like a whirlpool as it passes your lips and then splits into the left and right lungs. They're like these branching oak trees. As that oxygen diffuses into the heart, it almost creates this pattern like a murmuration. And this part of the project, it started with an email to the Fraunhofer Institute. So on the left there, I was just on YouTube searching blood flow through the human body, and I found this little wonder. And it got me thinking. Initially I was just looking at it as like, oh, it's beautiful motion and the particles. But then I thought, who's actually seen that? It felt to me like the relationship I've got with my heartbeat is there for every breathing moment of my existence. It's always there as a backdrop to every moment. But I don't know what it looks like. I'm familiar with the rhythm if I pay attention to it. And so it dawned on me that there's a beauty here. It's like a pen pal that you've been in a relationship, and it's the first time you see them, you're like, oh, hello, mate. So that's what's going on all the time. And then, so from the heart center, the blood's branching out through you're just like an estuary, and it's eventually sort of from the heart center going out through arteries. In fact, it found some really bonkers stuff. You know in Game of Thrones where they get their throat slit and the blood spurts out? Well, it's traveling up this main pipe, which is like the size of a wine bottle, the top of a wine bottle. 3 feet a second is coming up there. It's incredible. It takes a minute to do a lap of your whole body. And if you're really sensitive to smoking weed, then you can notice it. You can feel it go like, ooh, it goes down. If you count for a minute, you're like, oh, yeah, it's in my fingers. Oh, it's getting down to my toes. You feel it on the back of your head. So, yeah, a minute to do a lap of the body is quite incredible. So, yeah, we were thinking, about the body as an ecosystem and following this flow, and it's led to this large-scale virtual reality project. So I'm just going to play you a little piece of it. And it relates to the title of the project, because when you follow the journey of oxygen through the human body, then you arrive at the cell. And within respiration, the oxygen is meeting the food, and it's basically, or the nutrients, and it's unlocking the sun's energy that was trapped in the bonds between the carbon. So it is actually the sun's energy that was trapped by plants that is released. So every time you're moving or whatever you're doing, respiration is unlocking that energy. So this is a little trailer for this piece. So the next stage of this project, we've been exploring virtual reality as the most powerful way to explore worlds that are beyond the limits of our perception. But then the business model sucks. So we start to explore different ideas. We've been doing installation projects for a long time anyway, light installations, sound installations. So this project is going through a process now where we're designing this large-scale projected ecosystem so that people can explore the intricacies of the human body and follow oxygen through the body at scale. So one of the big influences behind this idea of, I suppose, exploring the tissue of existence, the fibers that connect all living beings, came from this amazing book, Existence, a Story by David Hinton. And so in the book, he talks about existence as a living process that we humans are inside. And actually, when he kind of uses this landscape painting as the backbone to the story, and it's beautifully crafted because the process of painting was basically a Taoist Buddhist meditation. So you would paint yourself from the third person, from the kind of God's perspective, and the process of starting with the blank canvas of nothing, and then something emerging, and using the pigment of paint to represent the clothes, the folds in the cloth, the clouds, the trees. Everything is rendered through this kind of, through the paint, which is a metaphor for the tissue of existence, that everything is kind of emerging from nothing, and that there's no real separation between a human, a rock, a cloud, that we're all part of this unfolding. So then, exploring humans and forests led to a really juicy brain fart. I was thinking, what if you were lying down, you're in virtual reality. In fact, we could treat this like a little meditation. Maybe close your eyes. So you walk out into a forest and you lie down on your back, and looking up, you see a sequoia tree branching up with the blue sky above. You're taking some deep breaths, and then slowly time starts to accelerate. So the sun moves through the sky and sets. The moon comes, the stars move, and it's getting faster and faster. The shadows are shifting like sundials. It's going up, fizzing. And then now we're into sort of tree time, and you take your last breath, and you start to sink down into the soil as your body decomposes, and mushrooms start to flower out of your chest. And you're basically having an out-of-body experience of your own death, and everything that you would call you in terms of the matter of your body starts to sprawl out. It starts to get woven into mycelium and root structures. And as you trickle down, you realize that everything that was you, it becomes the ingredients for new life. That everything that you would have called you in that moment of death is essential for life, and that life and death are woven into this relationship. And maybe you could just like expand out, and when the mycelium tickles the root tips of trees, they have this sort of interspecies communication where they're like, oh, Barney's just died, and I've got some of his juice in me. Do you want to do a swap? And they kind of, in first contact, the root has a chemical conversation. It softens itself when it knows that the mycelium is the sort of friendly one, because they're not all friendly. And then they have this exchange, and they kind of penetrate each other and start like squirting juice into each other. And so the glucose from the tree is flowing down into the mycelium because it needs that to sustain itself. And then it's all of the nutrients that have broken down, all that decomposition is flowing into the tree. And so yeah, I was thinking, oh yeah, we want to make that. We haven't made that one yet, but we're in the process. And so anyway, I've been telling that story for a while, and I was in LA, and this lovely chap, Louis Schwartzberg, who directed Fantastic Fungi. In fact, I've got a story about him, because I met someone else that knew him, and they said, oh, Louis, yeah, we were doing a shoot, and no one knew where he was, and then someone went to find him, and he was looking at a flower, and there was a little bee pollinating, and he's like, Louis, you're needed on set. And he looked up, and he's so beautiful. He's crying, looking at a bee. So any human being that can cry from looking at a bee pollinating a plant is my kind of human. So anyway, he reached out to us when they were making Fantastic Fungi, and we did a few of the animation sequences. So it was a good opportunity for us to explore this underworld, thinking about what does it look like under the ground? This dark dimension of reality that all life flowers out of. Like, what's going on down there? So this is one of those sequences. Again, this was in collaboration with Eric Ferguson. Cool. So it's a bit of a meandering journey, but to wind things up at the end here, I'm a big fan of Terence McKenna, and he just nailed it here. Nature is not our enemy to be raped and conquered. Nature is ourselves to be cherished and explored. Thank you. That's the end of it. Did I
Excellent.
finish early?
Yeah, that was excellent. Let's go over. We've got a little time for Q&A.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
You sit in the far seat, and I'll sit in the near one. You can get questions in fitc.ca/questions. We got a few here. I was happy to see Alan Watts in there. I'm a big Alan Watts fan.
Yeah.
So you talked about actually a couple of these questions, so I'm going to skip them. But there's an interesting one from online. Do you see crossovers between science and spiritual practice? And those are kind of loaded terms, I guess. But
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's weird because science does a good... Whenever you observe something, you have to point a lens, and it's a process of focusing, right? So what you exclude and what you include in your lens sets up a certain framework. And so if you're following the kind of science's institutions or lenses, then they're all focused in, like one person's looking at a cell, another one's looking at a forest, maybe Earth system scientists are looking at these global data sets. And really, for me, it was about how can you draw upon these different data sets, bring them together into kind of these larger simulations that allow you to see the relationships. And that's kind of the key. And Gregory Bateson, who's another guy that I really follow, he talks a lot about there's no such thing as a thing. Like nothing exists in separation. And actually, it's this shift in your mindset that it's so easy because of the nature of language to see everything as a collection of things that are interacting, but it's really in the gaps in between. And I think spiritual practice has a similar kind of unfolding, that if you're, by surrendering the ego or the sense of being an individual or separate self, what you don't find just like emptiness and darkness. What you do is you dissolve like one of those fizzy bath bongs. You sort of dissolve into something where the ego has to evaporate or has to step aside in order to expand into this larger whole. And so, for me, I think we think about our work as kind of like scientific hallucinations that kind of sits in that space.
Well, I was going to ask, actually, along those same lines. I mean, a lot of the kind of insights and this idea of the relationships being as important or more important than the distinct objects, it brings to mind psychedelic experiences. And I'm curious if psychedelics have been a part of your life and if that's an important part of creative practice for you.
Yeah.
I figured.
Was it obvious?
Can you talk? I mean, there's a way to do that where, it's just fun and all that.
Yeah.
But it sounds
Sorry, Mum and Dad.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
Mum and Dad.
Little do they know.
No.
That's what was behind all this.
No, I mean, dude, it's like... I think for me, the psychedelic experiences, I've had a few, and it's such a mystery. It's such a mystery, and I love this kind of, when you take a sort of heroic dose and it all goes pear-shaped, that letting go is it's like dying, because you can get panicky, and it's like this whole thing, but then once you've let go, I felt it like you're getting swept over a waterfall, and you're... And like in the beginning, you're like, hey guys, you're doing Niagara Falls and you're in a barrel and you think it's going to be fun. And then you're like, oh shit, this is getting, and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. And you're sort of swimming upstream, and like with each paddle in, it's like your ego's pulling off and memories are getting pulled away, like an onion getting unraveled, like, and there's a certain point where you just have to surrender. You can't, there's no going back. You've committed to it. Yeah. And I think in that space, I've just found like deep connections to, it felt like a soup of pure mischief and love, almost like, where do peacocks come from? And like all of the rich tapestry of biodiversity, every sort of atom in existence. It's so, the whole thing is so bonkers. It feels like that maybe psychedelics are allowing you a sort of insight into this underlying, I guess, super potential that manifests in the beauty around us.
That's well said.
Yeah.
I think you could argue that what you're doing with your work is to engineer, hopefully, that kind of an experience, right? You're trying to create that experience of revealing the relationships and getting people maybe to even dissolve themselves a little bit and live in those moments. But, and even Alan Watts says this, we can't live in that space all the time, right? We do have to return, we got to go to work, we have to go back to the world of objects and words. So what is it that you hope people bring back with them? When they come back to their normal lives, what do they bring back, if anything, what do they bring back from those experiences that you're helping to architect?
Well, I think there's, okay, so in terms of, like, I'm on a journey myself, and so I don't want to sort of preach or, you know, it's a process, I guess, of understanding, and maybe the work in some ways has a certain quality to it that affects the audience, but as an artist exploring these themes, it's changing me. Every project that we're doing, the deep dive into the science and working with tribes in the Amazon and going out there and, you know, exploring the true complexity and biodiversity. I think at the source of it would be if you can offer people a perspective shift that gives them a deeper connection to beauty, you know, and also intimacy that, you know, if you do start to think of a tree as something that's part of you, you know, you're not, you can sit in front of a tree, and so what is the picture or the concept or the narrative that flavors your relationship to a tree? And I think that's maybe the thing I'm trying to get at, that, you know, some of these narratives that go beyond language could create relationships that sit there like sunglasses and flavor your relationships to plants, pollinators, and the world. And then maybe through that you might be acting differently, or but I don't think there's any pressure. It's more of a celebration of these things.
You don't have an agenda, in other words. You're not trying to get everybody to become ecologists or anything,
No.
but maybe that might happen. But who knows? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Oh gosh, there's so many good questions here. Okay, this is a good one. Maybe this is from Andrea. Thank you, Andrea. What advice would you give to emerging artists and designers who are interested in pursuing a career in the digital arts, and what skills or traits do you think are most important for success in this field? You're kind of talking to us from, you know, this kind of, you're pretty deep into this, but if you were to start over maybe, or what would you tell maybe your younger self, I guess?
Interesting. I think it's weird. Now, at a certain point, I couldn't stay up with the technology. So I used to be a much more hands-on animator, and sort of over time, it just, as the scale of projects grew, I guess a bit like a feature film director, you end up with a huge team. There's like experts in, like Nathan Sinigaglia, and he's like tickling particles and writing all these fluid dynamics code. Like that whole Evolver is one giant fluid sim. And we got, the data sets were crazy. Like, is this even possible? We're going to be able to do this? It took months. It took 4 years, actually, in attempts and failures, and we'd release bits. But I suppose, like, or at least my role in this process is that I'm holding the vision and trying to sort of share that. I'm kind of like a PDF machine, and I'm just selling. Like making these pitches that are like, come on, Nathan, we're going to make this thing. And I'm like, hey, we need some money. Let's go to Cannes. And, hey, can we have some money to make this thing? So I'm like a salesman for the ideas. But then once you've got funding, we've been lucky to get funding for a lot of our artwork, then, just...
So if I tease some advice out of that, it's have a vision, learn how to communicate it in a compelling way, and then learn how to collaborate.
Yeah, but even like, so if I was going to be down on myself and where I'm at, like I miss the clay, I miss my hands being in the process. And so although it comes with benefits, I get a lot out of, you know, diving into the interviewing scientists and exploring the depths of the themes. I do miss the hands-on element. But then the people we're working with are so talented, it seems like I could never get to that level. And so I've just let go now, and I'm just on the tiller having a pina colada.
That's fair enough. Okay, that's all we have time for.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Pleasure.
everybody. Big round of applause. Okay, we've got. Let's see. We've got 2 more speakers. I'm starting to get that feeling. I've been to a lot of conferences, and I love this feeling, but I also kind of dread it, where you're starting to fill up. Right? Your brain is probably like fuzzy. I mean, especially after this. My God, I need a break. So take this 15 minutes. Go out. Go do something. Shut your brain off. Go. I don't know. Ask for a drink ticket. And. And we'll be back here in just a little bit. Check out Labalal Design's booth if you haven't. They're right across the way. And of course, the bar and the drawing room might be open now. You can get coffee up there too. We'll be back at 3:55, okay? Thank you.